What's up guys, welcome back to the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon podcast. My name is Michael and today we're going to talk about UFC Argentina. We'll cover the main event and the co-main event. So let's just jump right into it and talk about the main event first. Neil Magny versus Santiago Ponzinibbio. Many people think that because of Neil Magny's size, his reach and his height, people think that he is or supposed to be good on the feet, and although he's not horrible, he's a better grappler than he is a striker. His style is weird but also weirdly effective. When he can, he does use his reach and actually throws a good jab. But there are obvious holes in his style that can be exploited, like getting leg kick for example. Ponzinibbio is actually a polished fighter. His footwork is good and tight, his combinations are nice, he's aware of the space of the octagon, he likes to pressure and throws a healthy amount of strikes, like Magny does. Magny also works at a high pace, and I think that the pressure of Ponzinibbio will not allow him to throw the amount of strikes that he usually does. And also Ponzinibbio's leg kicks are very good, so that was something that I was looking forward to, the reaction Magny will have to Ponzinibbio's leg kicks. And from the very beginning of the fight you could see Magny pawing with his lead hand and throwing a jab as Ponzinibbio was looking to close the distance. And within the first 20 seconds, Ponzinibbio was able to back Magny up to the fence. And this is important because of the style dynamic. Like I said earlier, Magny has problems with kickboxers that push him back and make him uncomfortable. And Ponzinibbio was doing just that. I mean, he was really trapping Magny against the cage. Every time Magny tried circling out, Ponzinibbio would sidestep and remain in front of him. Then Ponzinibbio would look for his opportunities to strike with overhand rights because of Magny's height, and with hooks because hooks are a circular strike and they cut off Magny moving to either side. He was basically running into them at this point because Ponzinibbio's pressure was really bothering him. It was like 1 minute into the fight and Ponzinibbio was really in his face. Not so much in a way of throwing 10 or 15 strikes a minute, but just with his presence. He was really staying on him. Left hooks and jabs hurt Magny's right eye, and it was really bothering him quite a lot. He was holding it, covering it, so that he doesn't get hit in it again. And one thing that has to be addressed here is Ponzinibbio's patience. Ponzinibbio was really staying on Magny. He was sidestepping every time Magny tried to escape, but he wasn't throwing a crazy amount of strikes yet. He was using a jab and he was trying to land quality strikes and set things up. And Magny was clearly uncomfortable. It was not looking good for him from the start. He was trying to get off the fence, he was throwing that jab, but Ponzinibbio's pressure was too technical for Magny. He knew exactly what he had to do, and I was really impressed with that. His footwork looked really, really good. What Magny needed was to throw more strikes to scare Ponz away. He did that a couple of times, but it didn't work for long enough. Ponzinibbio would then get right back to pressure. And that was the corner advice from Magny's coaches. They told him to be first, to just throw, because if he throws, he's making Ponzinibbio back up, or at least he's making him not pressure anymore. And from there he could work to set up his right hand. It was really about the space. If the fight was taking place in the middle of the cage, with both fighters throwing punches, then Magny would be more successful because he's more comfortable there. But when he's backing up, he can't throw the amount of strikes that he wants to. So his coaches were calling for him to just be first. And Magny did that from the start of the second round. He was taking steps forward, throwing a jab, throwing a right hand, but Ponzinibbio's footwork was just too good. And then finally Ponzinibbio used his leg kicks and actually knocked Magny down with a leg kick for the first time. Like I said, Magny had and still has difficulty taking leg kicks, so that was a tactic that I thought could really work throughout the fight. There was one gorgeous sequence from the second round where Ponzinibbio reversed the pressure, so Magny was moving forward and Ponzinibbio faked a right hand to make Magny throw his right hand, and as he did, Ponzinibbio ducked under and turned him around. Now Magny's back was against the cage and Ponzinibbio was the one in control of the octagon. Very, very nicely done. I was quite impressed with that. Second round was the round of the leg kicks. Ponzinibbio knocked Magny down with leg kicks, I think 3 or 4 times, and Magny's leg was really hurting. So as I was watching the fight, I thought that Magny was in real trouble. I thought that if he keeps kicking his leg, the referee might stop the fight. And I have to give some credit to Magny because he had a good idea to come out hot from the very beginning of pretty much every round. And he was throwing punches, he was moving forward, trying to gain back the initiative. But the problem was that he wasn't doing anything authoritative. If you don't pose a threat or if you don't scare your opponent away, they will keep coming until you take a step back. And then you take another step back and another until you backed up against the fence. And that was pretty much what was happening every time Magny tried to throw at Ponzinibbio. And the thing that made Magny back up most of the time was Ponzinibbio's jab and his footwork. In the third round, they spent more time in the open space and Magny did connect a couple of times, but it was not insignificant. And at that point there were 2 rounds to go, and I was not seeing how Magny could win this fight. Ponzinibbio was in control for 15 minutes now, and there was really nothing that Magny showed to convince me that he could win the fight. Maybe he could stop the pressure if he would get a takedown and get on top and land some good ground and pound, because he's pretty good on top. But at that point, I wasn't really convinced that was happening. And to win the fight, he pretty much needed to stop Ponzinibbio. So there was nothing that could indicate of that happening. 30 seconds into the 4th round, and Ponzinibbio lands another leg kick that brings Magny to the ground. And I thought that his leg was hurt badly previously in the 3rd round, but now he was just getting kicked in it more and more. And with a badly hurt leg and Magny without mobility was even easier to pressure. And when you have been backed up against the cage and your feet are squared, your punches have less power because you don't have a good stance. So landing a shot that could scare Ponzinibbio away was even more difficult to pull off. And after a couple of more knockdowns from those leg kicks, the ref was pretty much warning Magny to fight back and defend himself. And yeah, I thought that if that happens, it would not be a bad stoppage. If, for example, Magny doesn't get up as fast or willingly after getting kicked and knocked down one more time from those leg kicks, it could have been stopped, and I would not be mad at that. But instead of that, Ponzinibbio knocked Magny out with a punch. He pressured him against the cage, and after another one of those thunderous leg kicks, fired a nasty right hand right to Magny's jaw. And Magny was squared with his feet and his leg was busted. So there's an interesting thought about this. When your base and your stance has been compromised, you are more susceptible to the knockdown or the knockout because your body can't absorb the impact of the punch. And that was pretty much what contributed to this knockout. You know, Ponzinibbio pressured Magny back against the cage. He took away his stance, he took away his defense, and he was looking to set up that right hand, and, you know, finally one of them landed. Ponzinibbio wins by knockout, and man, he looked really good. The pressure, the footwork, the jab, the leg kicks, all of that contributed to the finishing blow. Congrats to him, and wow, he's definitely a contender in the welterweight division right now. He was out with an injury, so I think it was like almost a year since his last fight, but the welterweight division definitely looks interesting, and congrats to him on the win. That was a very nice performance. And let's move on to our co-main event then. Ricardo Lamas versus Darren Elkins. Lamas was coming off of a 2-fight losing streak, and Elkins lost his last fight to Alexander Volkanovski. Lamas' fight with Mirsad Bektic could have been an example of how to beat Lamas using wrestling, which is Elkins' strength. For Elkins' wrestling to work, he prefers to get you on the cage. From there he can chain his takedowns and get you to the ground. And with Lamas, I thought that it might not be an easy task to do, because he's not actually a bad outside fighter. he knows how to move, and he knows how to score from the outside and how to keep himself in the middle of the cage for as long as possible, because that's where he prefers to be. And it was actually Lamas who got the first takedown after they clinch. Elkins attempted a knee and Lamas cut it and turned it into a takedown. Elkins managed to stood up and get Lamas on the cage. It's a position he used in the past with success. Also, like I said, takedowns can come easier from there, so it wasn't looking bad for Elkins from the very beginning. He was punching, working for takedowns, punching some more, until they separated. I noticed that when Elkins wanted to move forward, Lamas tried to stop him from doing so by punching and kicking as Elkins was trying to take steps forward. Also, it had an undertone of showing him that Lamas was not afraid to engage. And that's a good idea, because Elkins is known to be very durable, so showing him like, hey dude, I can throw down and probably crack you, so better watch out, was not a bad idea. And it worked for a little bit. But because Elkins is so relentless, he finally pushed Lamas back and got himself into the clinch where he could start using his wrestling, and it was also a position where he had the most success previously. Both guys were working in the clinch until Lamas separated once again, and he did it by using inside control on Elkins' bicep. He created a space and circle out. It was basically an overhook with Lamas's left hand, so you can lift that up and create some space, and then he had bicep control with the right hand, so you can push that away and just turn him and escape. Lamas, in my opinion, was a little bit too eager to engage with Elkins, and it was in those moments that he would get hit the most. Then after Elkins caught a leg kick and they scrambled, Elkins ended up on top in right position trying to take the back. They stood up and Elkins dropped for a double leg and actually got the first takedown of the fight. Very nicely done by Elkins, securing a takedown at the end of the round, possibly stealing it, which is very smart. If you pay attention, sometimes fighters will do that. They will look for a takedown at the very end of the round to end it in a dominant position and hopefully secure the round in the eyes of the judges. The corner advice for Elkins was to throw feints, back Lamas up, and when he fires at you, return with 2 or 3 shots. And that's what you, ladies and gentlemen, call a good corner advice. It's exactly what he needed to do, and it's what worked before, so very nicely done by Elkins' coaches. And for Lamas, at least, the last part of the corner advice that we got to hear was to throw a non-committal jab, just to flick it. I think it was because when Lamas committed to engaging with and throwing with Elkins was firing back and landing punches of his own. I didn't hear the first part of what his corner asked him to do, but I think they wanted him to be more elusive, stay away from the cage, use the jab to circle out and score on the outside. In the second round, the same thing was working every time Lamas tried to kick Elkins. Elkins was firing back with 2 or 3 punches, and the same thing happened when Lamas punched. Elkins would punch with him, and that's how you make your durability count. He's not the most technical kickboxer. In fact, he would not be high if there was a ranking of the most technical kickboxers. He would not rank high at that ranking at all, but he's making it work. He's making it work with his durability. Every time Lamas engages him, and he's the last one throwing, which kind of gives him the last laugh or gives him the last word in the exchange. And the second time Lamas took Elkins down, it was a counter to Elkins moving forward. It was a counter to Elkins' pressure. He got him down briefly as Elkins reversed the position and got up. It was quite difficult for Lamas to control Elkins on the bottom because, well, he's just a good wrestler and he scrambles and he's durable, so he doesn't really mind getting punched in transitions. Later in the second round, they were scrambling and you could see the opportunistic nature of Lamas. Whenever he got just enough of space and position to punch, he would punch. And that actually allowed him to get back up to his feet after some exchanges on the ground. And I think that moment gave Lamas some confidence and momentum, because after that he was landing punches, he was pushing Elkins' back against the cage himself. He was pressuring Elkins' back. And then the jab was landing too. The leg kicks, the long line leg kicks, man, those were brutal. I mean, we've seen them in the main event and the co-main event, so it was a quite nice display of how those could work. So now with Elkins backed up against the cage, Lamas was picking his shots. But man, Elkins is just so fucking durable. He ended that round by controlling Lamas in the clinch, dirty boxing, and eating a kick to the neck. Sometimes durability can hurt you in a way of, like, sure, you still are in the fight, but if your opponent is gaining the momentum that he needs to win, I think that durability can hurt you and put you in positions where you're still in the fight, but you're not in control of the fight, and that's what I think was happening after the second round. Elkins' corner was once again advising him to pressure and counter every time Lamas throws that leg kick. When Lamas was kicking Elkins in the open space, he was actually able to counter, but when Elkins was backing up, that's when Lamas was able to land that long line leg kick. So he really needed to make sure that it was Elkins moving forward, and that's what the corner advice was all about. The third round was basically Elkins rushing in and trying to pressure Lamas, and Lamas was basically trying to move away and hit Elkins after he creates some space. And both guys actually had success with that, although I thought that Elkins was landing more shots, until Lamas scored another counter takedown. This time he timed it very, very well and managed to keep Elkins on the ground. He remained on top and basically ground and pound Elkins into a bloody mess. The ref stepped in and stopped the fight. Lamas won by TKO. I'm not sure if you wanna call it the comeback because the fight was back and forth, but I think that not a lot of people give Lamas enough credit. He fought the best of the best in the featherweight division, and do you guys remember what he did to Eric Koch? Lamas basically elbowed Koch into the ground. I mean, it was quite similar to this fight in the way of the damage and the position he used to finish the fight, which was on the ground. One thing about Lamas that shines throughout his style is the fact that he's a good finisher. That's the one thing that makes him very dangerous, his killer instinct. Whenever he smells blood, he goes after his opponent until he gets them out of there. And man, this time Lamas showcased that beautifully. The momentum shift, you could see the momentum shift at the end of the second round, and from there, it was just like a snowball effect. And just to add like a cherry on top of that performance, who would have thought that Lamas would out-wrestle Elkins? Especially after Lamas' last performance and troubles with a good wrestler. So very nicely done by Ricardo Lamas. Congrats to him. He wins by TKO and gets himself back into the winning column. That will be all for the podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, then subscribe for more because I am going to make more of them. Thanks for listening and talk to you soon.